Yes. By 2005, I applied to a few university and I got accepted in contemporary media practice, Westminster University. So I went there.
Okay.
Throughout, the thing is, because I was a mature student by that time, university is a place, especially this type of, like, when you want to do filmmaking or any type of production, it's about not only learning the certain techniques and aspect of filmmaking, in my case, but also establish some good connections within the industry and with your peers in university. So the college, the university wasn't that bad. I did 2 modules of script writing, but because at the same time I used to work during the week, etc. So I was very limited to just only do my work and university work. So I didn't end up doing lots of networking and finding lots of people that I can work with. But as I said, I managed to write a few scripts at that time and made a few scripts. But by the time I finished in 2008, I realized, because I'm a mature graduate and I had to also work full time and pay for my bills, I didn't have the luxury of going from a lower position as a runner to go and build my networking slowly and get coming up. So I had to sit down and think, what's the best way for me? What's the best strategy? While I was doing that, I started writing my first feature script because I realized I was going to apply to go for MA for script writing, but then I realized it's too much money. And also, everywhere I looked up and they said it's all about writing. Write, practice, and you learn the more you write. And also there are lots of sources online and everything else. You can pick up lots of famous script for big films and you can just read through them, and then when you watch it you understand, you can self-taught. So I started writing my own first script. And by 2000 when I was working on it, and it was 2-3 years I was working on it and working night shift, etc. But then I realized that as a first time filmmaker, no one's probably gonna help me or invest in me. Bear in mind that that time I didn't make any short films, so I was like, okay, now I have to think what's exactly happening. This is script coming to an end, and so I decided I need to find a job that I can earn enough money to save, and then I can have some kind of investment money. So when I put my script on someone's desk, say, oh, this is a script I want to make, and also here's this much money I have. They're gonna take me more serious. While I was looking for a job, funny enough, I came across a police recruitment ad in Metro.
Did you actually go through with applying?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And 2012, I joined. I joined the College of Policing. I did my completed it, and I became a police officer.
Oh wow!
While I was a police officer, I started writing my second script, because by that time I made the decision that since I have some connection in Iranian cinema and also the currency exchange, it makes it easier and cheaper to make film in Iran. But I had at that time to think, because the first script I wrote, which is called The Outcast, it was happening in London, and the story was very intertwined with the location and being in Europe, and I couldn't just pick it up and go make it in another city, let alone another country. So I had to go back to thinking and brainstorming, so what shall I write, something that I can make save money and go make it in Iran. So I realized that I have to work on a subject that is very about the human condition, and regardless where it's made, it's still the same. So, and then I started working on my second script while I was a police officer and saving money. It wasn't easy, I promise you that.
I can imagine.
It's a very hard job. They're doing a very good job. Police in the UK.
That's very unheard of, though, isn't it? Having a police officer who's also trying to get his first film off the off the ground. It's quite a
Sure, but
unique
it's funny
combination.
enough that if you, I don't know, I found out about this. It was a documentary about the Star Trek. Actually, the original Star Trek writer, he was a police officer. He
Oh,
was in
really?
yeah, and then eventually he left because the success the Star Trek brought him, and then he left the job. But yeah, it wasn't easy,
No.
Sonia. I'll tell you. But I had to go through it. It broadened my perspective about because I'm a big fan of watching people, anthropology, and the social psyche of individual and the collective social psyche. And you can, and during the university, I used to work as a bouncer for 3 years, and one of the things I used to do watch people getting drunk and behave in a certain way. So it was for me, literally, I was just watching these different characters, different boys in at the same. Let's say I would see a few interesting people and watch them throughout the night. How they get drunk. Are they trying to start to talk to some girls or boys? Or it was just exciting.
The people
So
watching
being a
is always
police
really good.
officer, yeah, you learn so much.
You
There are so many
do. No, I love people
stories.
watching.
Yeah. So it continued, and I was a police officer, seeing lots of other things, and it was very good. But by 2000, and long story short, I completed my second script called Untitled, and by 2000, mid 2017, I had enough money that I was sure that I can go make it. And by end of 2017, I quit my job as a police officer, and I left to Iran. And by end of 2018, I made my first feature film, which unfortunately I had to sell it because I ran out I ran out my budget at the end during post production. But it was bought luckily by let's say it's an online platform in Iran, one of the biggest one. So I sold the right to the film for 5 years to them. But yeah, and by early mid 2019, I got returned to the UK. I joined a London borough, and I'm working as a civil inspector at the moment.
Okay.
And I guess, and then the pandemic happened.
Sure.
I can continue going, but I leave it because I know you were going to ask about the pandemic.
Yeah, well, that's you kind of you kind of got to that point, which is really good because that's what I've been asking everyone else. So I was going to ask you, were you working on anything before the pandemic hit? So, like, we went into our first lockdown in March last year, and that was probably one of the longest lockdowns. So were you actually working on something at the time before that all kicked off?
Actually, when I told you I joined a London borough early 2019, it was actually yeah, it was 2019 mid to early March 2019. I became full time working for London borough.
Okay.
So I've been always working on different scripts, which I get to those in a minute. But when the pandemic, 1 week before the lockdown, Sonia, funny enough, I went down with COVID.
Oh my God! Did you have it very serious? Was it the serious type for you? Because some people had it very mildly, and then others had it really badly. Like my stepdad was really poorly with it.
Yes, mine was very. I was lucky enough; didn't need to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Ventilator and all that. But I tell you that, Sonia, which since then I'm a big advocate about. I was flat out for 2 weeks in bed, sweating, body ache. When I say sweating, that I had to change my top and the bedding twice every night.
Really? That bad?
Body ache. Yeah, that bad. Body ache.
Wow.
Sometimes I would pass out. Not sleeping, pass out, being delirious, and then I don't know what it was. I have a very high pain threshold, and I am a very strong man. I exercise
Yeah.
on a regular basis. I try to eat well. I don't smoke. I only drink once a blue moon, occasionally. So before I before I caught the virus,
COVID.
I thought I would be one of those people having it, and then 2-3 days like a flu, I'm back to normal. But it wasn't.
No. Well,
So
God, that must have been so awful for you.
it was
Oh, I'm
funny.
so sorry. Well, I'm glad you're much better now.
Oh yeah, took me about 2 to 3 months to get back to after that 2 weeks, another 2 to 3 months before I even got back to normality. Some strength
Wow.
in my muscle and body. So, but I was working because council frontline workers. I was working 2 days from going out, and 3 days from home. But what has happened throughout the lockdown? I started reading lots of books.
Mm-hmm.
I got into listening to podcasts, and I also wrote 3 short scripts. So I tried to, although I was working, but I also tried to be as
Productive
as I could.
Yeah.
So I wrote 3 books.
Wow.
Many books. I read many books and lots of podcasts, but I wrote 3 scripts for shorts.
Right. But that's very impressive as well, especially because you were using that time to good use as well. Do you know what I mean? Because most of us were just going out of our minds trying to figure out how to stay busy. But that's like I said to Mark and Tom, that was probably the best time to actually be writing because you had all that time on your hands, didn't you?
Yeah. It's funny because one of the scripts I wrote called The Bench, which I apply through BFI for funding. I don't know what's gonna happen, but it was based on, because my next door neighbor has a bench in the back garden,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked him if we can train together in outdoor in the garden, and he accepted it, and so throughout the whole, almost now, we train 3 times a week in his back garden, and I kind of coach him how to train, because funny enough, he had it, but he never used it. So, and I ended up, and he's a filmmaker himself.
Okay.
And also he used to be. He's not doing it anymore. He does lots of drag queen performances.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So I ended up writing The Bench, inspired by this kind of
former drag queen.
me and him. Yeah, me and him, and I dramatized it, and I wrote a script called The Bench, which we applied. Well, I found a producer. We have applied for BFI funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that hopefully going to go into production soon? Are you hoping?
That all depends. If we by the end of December, they're gonna announce the winner.
Okay.
Not the winner, the people who are being given the
finance
and funding. But in regards to what project I'm doing at the moment, end of November, I'll be going to Iran for 4 months. I'm gonna be on the unpaid leave, and when I was in Iran back in 2018, I was introduced to a multi-award winner director and producer, which is he's very well known, and we kind of became friends. So I've got I am going to Iran to make either my third feature film, third feature length script, which I've written, called Ibrahim, if I can find enough funding, because I have some money. If not, I'm making 2 short films. So that's my next step.
Oh wow! Oh, that's really, really impressive. Well done.
Well, we'll see. It hasn't been done yet, but so either feature film or 2 short films by early 2022.
Yeah.
I'll be hoping complete
to do that. I've lost track of what year it is, now, because like I stand there and I'm filling out a form. I'm like, what year is it now? I don't know anymore. And everyone refers to last year as 2019. It was like 2020, just kind of, where did
Yeah,
that go?
it's exactly. It's strange,
It was
and
really
as a,
bizarre. um, I just thought of a question to ask you. So, could you tell us the difference between the English film industry and the Iranian film industry? Are there any big differences in any way?
yes and no. Um, yes is because the dynamic of what's happening in how um, let's say filmmaking is done in Iran,
Hmm.
uh, and you got but Iran has two different cinema.
Okay.
Okay, and they are, I can't say they are both sides of the same coin because they're not.
Okay.
In Iran, you got the mainstream.
Hmm.
Okay, people pay and go watch in the cinemas, which is very much based on, let's say, entertainment.
Okay.
Because for the last 40 years, for lots of political, socio-political situation, Iran's been under
Sure. Of course.
sanctions, etc.
Yeah.
So there are lots of hardship in Iran. And I looked into it. It's not just Iran. Countries do have lots of hardship. Cinema when people is entertainment, like
Yeah.
in India as well.
Okay.
So people want to go and get away from the reality. So
But
they
it's
want to
like
go.
escapism, isn't it? In fact, like it's just a
Exactly.
fantasy. Yeah.
Escapism, that's the right word, you chose it. Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. So they go there to watch something funny. They will go there to forget about the realities happening, the
Sure.
inflation and the hardship. So that's the side of Iranian cinema. But then
Okay.
you got the other side of Iranian cinema, which is well known in the world. It's the independent art house cinema of Iranian
Okay.
film that they go around the world, and they always in big film festivals. There are always Iranian film and Iranian filmmaker. So much is that the last from 2010 to one of the one of the current most well-known Iranian filmmaker had two Oscar for 2010 Best Foreign Film Oscar, and then 2000, if I'm not mistaken, 17.
Oh, who was
So
that?
Asghar Farhadi
Okay.
for
So.
Separation and The Salesman.
Oh,
And
okay.
then,
And that was
yeah, and then
2010.
the first one was 2010,
Right.
and the other one, if I'm not mistaken, 2017,
Right.
or
Okay.
between 2015 or 17. I'm not sure exact the date, but yeah. And before that, you got people like Abbas Kiarostami,
Mhm.
which is very well known, and uh, people like Akira Kurosawa was saying that he's one of his favorite filmmakers. So, and you get that side of Iranian cinema, which is that art house authorship kind of approach to filmmaking. And when I say filmmaking, is the storytelling and also the film language.
Okay.
So in that side of it, which you were talking about the foreign film and other filmmakers, and what I was gonna mention, which probably if we get the chance to talk about it more in details, is the language of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And the language of filmmaking is something that, if it's understood by the filmmaker and the writer, it doesn't matter where it's made, although it has a flavor and the approach of that specific filmmaker and his vision and his identity, which comes from his culture and nationality, etc. But it still is a good film because it represents those ideals and understanding and vision through a medium of filmmaking.
Okay.
And the medium of filmmaking is the international language. It's like if it doesn't matter if it's the good film is made in Japan or Russia or Iran or UK, because it's the language, it's the same language that everyone talks and directs.
But it
Affect.
resonates with the audience, doesn't it? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's directly evoke human emotion. That's what I was going to get at.
Okay.
And when it does that within the framework of film language, you enjoy it. You watch it and you say, okay, I can understand.
Yeah.
It's a human emotion. I'm scared. I'm excited. I cry. because it's a drama or whatever it is. So yeah, in that sense, it's a very good cinema, Iranian cinema, Iranian, which is exported, because in Iran there are not much people apart from intellectual academics and film lovers. No one is really into that type of side of the Iranian cinema.
Okay. So would you say that the director that won the Oscar in 2010, afterwards, would you say that they helped to bring more exposure to Iranian cinema into the more mainstream, and also getting the rest of the world to take more focus and pay more attention to them?
I would no, because he himself is the second generation of the Iranian filmmaker.
Okay.
Before him, there were, as I said, he's passed away. He's a person called Abbas Kiarostami.
Okay.
He was the post-revolution Iran,
right?
Because Iran, when he went through the Islamic Revolution, 1979, the cinema changed what was before, because the revolution affected everything.
Sure.
The political aspect, cultural aspect, etc. So, Ashar Farhadi, the Oscar winner director, he himself actually was the second generation. Before him, Abbas Kiarostami was one of the very well-known auto. They refer to him as an auto cinema filmmaker, because his films, they were all, as I said, they are very interesting films. They're always mentioned in when it comes about filmmaking, cinema, and authorship, about how a director represents his style, that it himself becomes some kind of a example to follow, And so it was the Iranian cinema already was well known, but it was just now the next generation. He came and won an Oscar, and it was something that throughout the European cinema was already established. The Iranian cinema, it was appreciated. Actually, was given the Oscar they couldn't refuse, because now they realize, listen, this is a good film.
Yeah.
Regardless where it's made, if we don't get along with Iranian government for whatever reason, the movie itself is a good movie. So yeah, and then he won Oscar in 2010, and follow up, and I think in 2015 or 16 he won another Oscar for another film he made.
Okay.
And his recent film, which made it in Spain, with Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz was in it.
Okay.
Everyone knows, and he wrote and directed it in Spain. It was made in Spain.
Okay. I'm trying to think of other questions to ask you. I can't think of it.
Sorry if I sometimes just keep going.
No, that's what you're supposed to do. It's just like I listen to you and I respond. I'm just trying to think of what else to ask you. You were saying earlier that your father was the one that first introduced you to film as such. So I'm just kind of curious to ask, what was the first horror film you saw, and how old were you? Because we all have a story like this. I'll tell you mine in a little bit. You tell me yours first.
Sure. Of course. I tell you I can't really, to be honest with you, pinpoint the first horror film I watched with my dad, because I watched many, from the Hammer ones, the English Hammer from Christopher Lee to The Omen, etc. But the one that stuck with me, the first two, but the main one was The Exorcist.
Oh God! And how old were you?
I think I was 8.
Oh my God!
And I was sweating and jumping, and I had a nightmare. I went night to sleep with my dad in their bed, my parents, and then in the night I get, sweating and jumping and screaming, "He's coming, Ravish! My dad, she's coming!" And then my dad was talking to me and said, "Listen, I told you it's a horror film. I told you all makeup." And then he put me back in sleep, and then again I had a bad night when I got up. But that was The Exorcist and The Omen. These are the ones that stuck with me. And I'll tell you a funny story about that. We were on some kind of a family holiday with many other relatives, etc. So lots of adults that were downstairs, upstairs, everywhere. And then suddenly they put The Exorcist on, and they watched and everything. And then the kids, we were like in the second floors. They were all said, okay, you kids all sleep together. And so it was kind of a sleepover downstairs for all adults, upstairs all the kids. So, and bear in mind, I watched The Exorcist again, so I don't know for how many times. So, and I felt bad and embarrassed that in the middle of the night I was having a nightmare. I have to jump up and go downstairs to my dad and mom. So, and that got me thinking about all those things that my dad said about the makeup and everything. And also by that time I've already watched not the movie, watched the Thriller, if you remember. I don't know if you watched the Thriller original when it was released. At the end of it, they have like a 15 minutes bonus footages of how the makeup. I think it was a Stan Winston company or whatever.
Okay.
Was doing the makeup. Michael Jackson. And I remember watching that, and my dad was explaining, you see how they add all this makeup, etc.
Yeah.
So that time when we were on a holiday and we watched again, everyone watched The Exorcist, and then I was embarrassed to go downstairs, screaming to my dad, "Oh, I can scared, I can't sleep." I ended up thinking about my dad telling me about the whole makeup and this film, and
and it's not real.
The process. And believe you me, Sonia, after that and that kind of as a child thinking to myself, after that I never got scared. So I could watch horror film and then sleep well, and even if I had nightmares, get up and remind myself it's not real and go back to sleep. So that was the